across the fence, we're getting a jump start on the growing season. You can save money and have some fun by starting some of your own vegetables and flowers from seeds. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. After one of the coldest winters in recent memory, many of us are yearning to see something grow. Well, now is the time to start preparations if you're interested in sowing your own seeds at home. Joining me is UVM Extension horticulturalist Leonard Perry, and he's here to share some tips on starting seeds indoors. Yes.
Yes, it is time. And first of all, Judy, I wanted to mention about a tour I've got this summer. So I know a lot of people are interested in the tour we have to Coastal Maine Gardens. That is full.
Oh, really?
So, but
Good.
if people are interested in that, and probably be running it again next year. We've had great demand. But on July 6th, I have one to the Montreal Botanic Gardens, and I brought a few pictures to see some flowers again, see something green. And that's the main walk type thing you'll see on this day trip up to Montreal to the gardens. And there are just so many gardens, and it's time to see some of the different ones up there. This is the front planted. There's cannas. There's all kinds of other annuals, mass plantings. You can get some good ideas for combinations, even if you don't put in 10,000 different plants. And this is one of my favorites. I started growing each year, the Bolivian begonia, and this is called Santa Cruz Sunset. You can actually start this one from seed, but I like to usually get plants of this or Encanto series, it's an Encanto orange, but you can see they're very different. And these bloom like this all summer. And I got this idea up there to put, if you don't have a place to hang, put a little post and put them up on posts in the garden. So I thought that was a neat idea up at Montreal. So again, a lot of ideas. The flowery brook should be in full bloom there early July when we go on our tour up there, daylilies and all kinds of perennials of roses. Again, thousands of roses you can see in big beds of those, and a lot of the hybrid ones that may not grow here. A lot of other types of gardens. Here's a water garden you can walk through in the back. It's an insectarium, insect museum, 25th anniversary of that. So, and then herbs, just the formal herbs. There's a lot of edible plants and things you can start from seed, and like the cabbages. And I just thought this was great. All the different bed just of cabbages and kales, all the different foliage textures. So again, July 6th.
And how can people get information on that?
They can go to my website, perrysperennials.com or .info, and you can. There's a link right on that page to the garden tours.
All right, well, let's get some seed sowing, and you brought a friend along.
I have Sarah Kingsley Richards, research technician at UVM in their plant soil science department. She's been on the shows before, and she goes on the tours with us too.
Nice. Yeah. So let's get some seeds going here. Sarah, the first question someone might ask is, why should I start flowers and vegetables at home?
Well, number one, you get to see a little bit of green in your own house in this time of year. It saves money. It can save you some time. It can be a little more eco-friendly than the large producers. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, and one of the things I like is just the fun of doing it. Even if I don't get them planted out, I usually sow too much, but just seeing the little seeds grow into the green plants. And you can get a lot of varieties you won't find elsewhere too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, so Sarah, show us some options for containers and some of the other supplies that we're going to need.
Right. There's all sorts of containers that you can use. There's some familiar ones would be the 6-packs, plastic 6-packs, some peat, different types of peat pots. That you can get really high-tech and fancy with some starter kits that involve a wicking material, and it will regulate the moisture coming up into your cells, a lid to keep heat in, moisture in, and also keep maybe your cat out. Different sizes, all sorts of shapes. Even, egg cartons like you'd use in elementary school.
Sure, recycle those. So with the different containers, I guess that you sow seeds differently too?
You do. You do want to make sure that you have a good mix, potting mix. You don't want to use garden soil indoors anytime. And this time of year, it's all frozen anyway.
Right, and there's a reason why they call it potting soil.
Potting soil, and they actually sell specific seed starting mixes, which will not stay too wet. They'll drain easily. They're a finer texture typically. Because you don't want too wet, it'll cause diseases, and your plants will damp off. They'll die off. So a good potting mix is good. And anytime you use a mix, you want to add some water. And if it kind of stays in a ball when you give it a squeeze, then that's the right moisture content. It's not really soaking wet. If you squeeze it and water drips out, that is way too wet.
And then again, if it flies away or blows off the table, then that's not good either.
That's not good either, indeed.
And so, Leonard, you have some seeds that you've sown without soil.
I have. You know, looking right up here, these are sprouts, and if we lift that out of the container, they're on the bottom. There are roots coming out, going down where there's a little moisture, and you just rinse those each day. In a few days, you get these. You can use old seeds. This happens to be clover. You can buy seeds just for growing sprouts. So that's a really good way to start some greens and see something green very quickly and eat too.
And so I know one of the common questions you get is, can we use seeds from last year?
Well, you can, and first thing is to look on the package. I know a lot of times you end up with leftover seeds and see the germination, but what I do, this is a moist paper towel, and all I've done is put 10, these are some sunflower seeds from last year. I want to see how well they germinate, so I just put 10 seeds, and then I'll watch them and just see how many, if they very slow to germinate or not too many, then I'll sow a lot more. If they're dead, then obviously I'll have to buy more, but that's a good way to just a rolled paper towel in a plastic bag and just every day or two look at those.
Sarah, what about watering too? Because a lot of people have a tendency to overwater. We talked about not having your soil too wet, but then when you're watering your containers, you don't want them to get too wet either.
Exactly, and that's where one of these systems with the wicking cloth comes in really handy. But if you get I brought along a, if you get a watering can, make sure you get one with a very fine holes in it so that you're not flooding the container when you do that. Or a spray bottle that can mist the surface so you don't get a lot of water just flooding out that container. You don't want those seeds to float away. You just want to maintain an even moisture. So you just want a little light watering on a regular, steady basis.
Okay. And what about heating pads? Do you have to keep the seeds a certain temperature?
It helps that they're at a warm temperature. I know a lot of us keep our houses a little cool, and one way you can get around that and to keep your seeds warm is a heating mat, which is over on Leonard's side there. It's just it's got some heating elements in there. You plug it in, it maintains a really low, steady heat source to those seeds.
And I'm surprised at how thin it is.
Yeah, and it's just very simple, and it's not really hot. It's just, you can put your hand on and barely feel it warm. It's just enough to keep the soil temperature in the high 60s, say that's a good temperature, and you just plug it in, it regulates itself. The fancier ones you can get, that you can, bigger ones and with thermostats, and you can really get involved, but this is a real simple, inexpensive one you can find.
What about light?
Okay, light is important, obviously, for these, just as, you know, the moisture and so forth, and actually brought a few pictures of some different light setups. You can actually buy a light stand. I have one, and got a picture of one that you can find at a normal store, a garden store, complete garden store. A lot of stores have those. You can make a homemade light stand. And so I did one at home out of 2x4s and just, you know, tube fixtures. You can again get at a home store or hardware store. And here's the retail unit right here. Nice. You can adjust it up and down. You want it about 6 inches above the seeds, so as they grow you want to get it higher. That's what I've done with my stand. I've actually hung the fixtures with chains, and so you can raise those up and down. And then the soil thermometer, if you want to check the soil temperature. That's a daylight or natural light tubes. That's one option you can go with to give that uniform spectrum, or you can mix up cool and warm white fluorescent tubes, you know, the bluish and the reddish colored ones. And then if you want even more light, it's kind of to maximize your light, this is foil you can place if it's near a wall or something behind, so that reflects the light back on these herbs in this case. And then there's a whole host of things you can get. The timers to run the lights, maybe 16 hours a day is a good amount. Meters to check the moisture if you're not sure on that. Heat mats we've talked about and so forth.
It also will increase places where you can grow, because, I mean, if you have the light source, you can have it in the basement even out of the way.
Exactly, and that's where mine is, in the basement, you know.
Not in front of every single window in your house.
Exactly, you know, you may run out of window space quickly.
Well, of course, commercial greenhouse growers sow many more seeds than we do, sometimes hundreds of thousands of seeds. So they have more mechanized ways of doing things. Across the Fence visited Clausen's in Colchester to see how they get seedlings started.
Hi, welcome to the seeding facilities here at Clausen's Greenhouse and Florist in Colchester, Vermont. This is where we do all the seeding, and here is a finished prepared flat that is ready for seeding. Each flat has 288 cells, so that's 288 plants that will come out of one flat. We bring it over to the machine here, which runs on air and fiber optic eyes that read the tray. The first eye that reads it is going to tell the dibble bar here to come down and just make a slight indentation for the seed to cradle in. The second step, it comes to where the seeding actually begins, reads the eye, and it is programmed to feed it one seed. The needle will drop down a seed and then pick up another one by vacuum. And the third stage, it comes into the hopper here, which has another fiber optic eye that will give it a light covering of vermiculite to help it through its germination phase. It comes out of the machine, then it gets stacked for germination, and every bench in this house has a biotherm with hot water that runs through it, so they all stay toasty from the top and the bottom. And then they get about 3 to 4 days once the germination starts. They get laid out, and then it can take up to a month to 2 months, and then you'll be purchasing it for your home.
Well, it's amazing to see all those plants and all that technology. You know, I visited Clausen's myself recently, a couple weeks ago, and all the planters were just starting to have the sprouts come out, and I thought, you know, another month or two, they're going to be full of flowers. I can't wait. So if we're seeding at home, obviously we don't have the machines.
No.
So we have to be careful how we go about doing that, depending on what you're planting, I suppose.
Yes, indeed. It's not terribly difficult to do. The larger the seed, the deeper it goes, or the smaller, the closer to the surface, but still not super deep. I mean, you can take something like a squash seed, which is a good size for a little guy, and you can use maybe a pencil, poke a little hole for it, and drop that in, cover it over, and there you go, you've planted. If you're you can do the same thing for something like a pepper in a 6-pack, put 1 or 2 per cell. If you're planting something a little smaller in a flat, you can use a marker or something, or a pencil to create little rows. And then just sprinkle your seeds into the row slowly to try to spread them out, and then just cover them back over again.
So you shouldn't just like dig around, throw the seeds on top,
Or
helter-skelter?
Helter-skelter, no. And again, it's disease is one of the major problems you'll have to deal with. And if you plant them in row, if one row gets a disease, the other one should be
I didn't realize
safer.
that. Okay.
So if you just scatter them willy-nilly, any disease that pops up will just spread throughout the container.
We don't want that.
And we don't want that.
And I know you brought a couple of other things that we didn't talk about. This, which is something to put a seedling into.
Yep, that's another. If you don't want to buy a bag of soil, they sell these little dehydrated soil pucks that once you water them, they'll puff right up. Also, there's other kinds of peaty soil pucks that do the same thing. This one has a mesh around it, so it's kind of a self-standing pot, but this one you can put right into a 6-pack.
Perfect, makes it so easy. Now, I know, Leonard, you have a couple of resources that you want to talk about.
I do, and I wanted to just show these seedlings. One of the things that to follow up on that, once they come up here, sometimes you sow them too thickly, like I usually do, and so you want to thin these out so you have 1 plant per cell. So you can go through and just pinch that out. You can. It's better than trying to pull it out. I use a real small scissors too, but just so you have 1 plant in each of those cells. So that's a good way to do that. But timing is very key too. And on my website, I've got a list of different leaflet that shows all the different times. And now is a good time to start most of the things. Or, as you mentioned, the books. There are a couple of books I brought pictures of. The Flower Gardener's Bible by Lewis Hill. And this has all the details you'll need to know, plus about a lot of the flowers. And then, of course, for vegetables, there's the Vegetable Gardener's Bible, both by Story Publishing. Great resources to give you the rest of the story, that then we've been able to cover today.
Well, it's great, and it's also beautiful photographs to inspire us. Thanks so much for joining us today. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.